you know, Malo and Pascal came over to visit for the weekend. And while we were sitting over the kitchen table having breakfast, we got talking about heritage. Now, of course, Malu comes from a background where her mother is an islander, and it seems that that is from a heritage of very superstitious headhunting people. And of course, Pascal can trace his lineage back, the French lineage, right back to the Celts, who are, of course, great pagans, as we well know. So I was relating to them that my grandmother was from British Honduras, which, of course, like Haiti, is a very pagan land, or was. And it reminded me of a story, because in relating to them, I was telling them that I was brought up on an almost weekly diet of Ouija boards, which conjure up the spirits, and seances, which conjure up the spirits of the dead. You know, we didn't have television in those days, so you know how it is. But anyway, let's see what this story that came to mind, how it fits in maybe to our personal holographic universes. And it's the story of a young man whose old mother died. And he knew that she was very rich, but she failed to tell him where all her wealth was hidden. So, of course, he was hell-bent on finding his inheritance. So he looked in all the drawers, he pulled out all her boxes, he went into the attic, he went into the basement, he pulled out the ceiling, he pulled up the floorboards, but the wealth could not be found anywhere. So he thought that the only recourse he had was to have the assistance of an old witch. So he went to an old witch in the village who was well known for her spells and her powers, and asked, could she help him find this wealth? She said, yes, I can do that. She said, but it'll cost you half your inheritance. Well, said the young man, that's fine. Yes, that's a bargain. Well, she said, well, go on, off you go, because I'm not going to use my spells while anyone's around. So off the young man went. And the old witch took out a knife, and she said a little incantation over it, and then she put it under her pillow and went to sleep. Well, the next morning, the knife was gone. And she smiled to herself, because that night, when she went to sleep, there appeared in front of her a demon with a knife in his heart, begging her, please remove this knife. She said, no, I won't remove it until you bring this old woman to me and she tells me where her treasure is hidden. Well, she woke up, and the next night she dreamt the demon came to her, looking decidedly pale and wan, with his son. And his son was begging the old witch, please take this knife out of my father's heart. No, she said, I won't do so until you bring up the spirit of the old woman and she tells us where the treasure is. Well, it disappeared, and the next night she had another dream, and this time there was the demon, looking quite bloodless, his son, and the old woman. And again the son of the demon begged, please take the knife out of my father's house. No, said the old witch, not until she tells us where her wealth is. And the old woman said, if I wanted to tell him, I would have told him while I was alive. But since I can't bear to see your suffering, I'll tell you it's in a box. So the next night, the old witch went to sleep, but the next morning she put her hand under the pillow and there was the knife. So she knew it was done. So she went to the young man and she told him what had transpired, that it's in a box. He said, but I've looked in every box, I've dug up the garden, I've been in the ceiling, I've under the floorboards. She said, it's in a box. So off the witch went and left the young man to his endeavours, and sure enough, when he went through all the boxes again, he found that one of them had a false bottom, and in that false bottom was his mother's treasure. He was rich. But of course, young man being as he was, there are reasons for all things. He didn't want the old witch to have the money, so he beat it out of town with all the treasure. 3 days later, the witch came back to the house, of course, and found him gone. But she wasn't at all perturbed, because she took out her knife, said a little incantation over it, and put it under her pillow. Where does this story fit into our holographic universe? Where does our heritage fit in to this place we find ourselves now? And all of us have in our lineage, if we trace it back, stripping away all of the facade of knowledge and rationality, reason, etc., we come to that pagan, occult. It's in all of us, isn't it? All of us. Where does it fit now into the dynamic of the place we now find ourselves?
Well, I reckon that now we know we have that, I don't know, you could say faith or whatever, that it's going to happen. So, and back then, what they were doing, they would set the little thing and then they knew that it was just going to happen. They just had that belief or something that it would take place.
Yes.
Once they, I guess. I don't know, I think it's something like that.
Yes. What comes to you from this? Sure, resonates with all of us, doesn't it? Where does it fit?
Because I'm a bit wary of all that now. To a certain degree, I'm like, I won't put a hex on anybody. When previously I didn't have two thoughts about it.
Pointing off the bone. I'd say we all operate on that level, and mostly without awareness.
All right.
Right.
Yes.
You know, even if you're angry with someone, you're projecting energy on that occult level.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
And that has an effect out there.
Okay.
Somehow,
Uh-huh.
it would seem.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess it's to become, you know, aware of that as real as the nitty-gritty.
Right.
Um,
That's right. But if we take away from this, as we recognize this place where we're at is a place where it's kind of selflessness, we don't have any intent as such for good or evil. Isn't it so? There's no self that judges that, just like you can witness what's going on. And yet there's a dynamic going on here, just the same, isn't it?
It's as though it all has its own sort of life, I suppose. That life within everything that's in that dance, and part of just watching it unfold
Okay.
is, you know, it's almost like we don't have to do anything.
Not at all.
And
No.
the more we interfere or try to fix it, the
The
more
worse it
complicated
gets.
it gets.
Yes.
You go into that place, you get into a mess. don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
But
it
it's
comes back down, I think what Bonnie was saying about that faith, you know, that there's that, just that understanding that all is well in the universe. I suppose.
okay.
Well, they leave it in the lap of the gods.
Yes, yes.
Right.
So exactly where do I find that place?
It's kind of this contradiction though, because it's kind of, you know, leave it in the hands of the gods as such, and yet we're all dancing God's dance.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's I don't know, I can't wrap my head around it.
But we can realize now that where we're at, I mean, in this lifetime, without any question, I've been to witches' covens, you know, I've been dancing with the demons, and, you know, been into the cathedrals and into the highest places. You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Isn't it so? You can go anywhere. You can dance with the witches or the ghouls or the demons, and
Yeah. Doesn't mean that you're going.
it doesn't mean that you're
become
going to become one, or you are one,
Mm.
isn't it?
Mm.
So it is this wonderful holograph, isn't it?
Yes, exactly, because there's, you know, like they said, the hologram, even by removing a little piece that remains.
Absolutely so. You cannot extricate that heritage out of us.
Mm.
You cannot exercise it, can you?
That's something that's really struck me through a number of different sources as to how it's like you say heritage path. It's like going so far back that, you know, I mean, to whatever they would call the Big Bang or whatever, you know, of creation. It's and everything is the same, you know, every tree and every bird and this involvement and movement and falling away and recreating, and it's happening on a physical, you know, like a nitty-gritty level as well as the occult level, and it's yeah, it's quite wondrous.
Absolutely,
It's
isn't
quite
it?
wondrous, yeah. When as all these interactions come in, you know, because that creation is a force in itself, and you know, it can be a negative force that of you know, like the rotting on the rainforest floor, you know, how that gives life to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all that dance of coming and moving and changing and becoming again, you know. It's right back to whenever.
That's right on. That's
To
right
the
on.
void.
Mm-hmm.
The original void. Yeah.
So we have heritage, but we don't have lineage anymore. Is that right?
Not so far as, because lineage is related to a mind,
Mm.
isn't it? Or a creed
Ah, right.
as
yeah.
such.
And awkward as well, isn't it?
Yes, certainly as well. Certainly, like you have the lineages of the witches
Mm.
and the Celts and so forth, too.
Still have the lineage of, we came from a worm, came from a worm.
Indeed, yes. But we can very clearly see the difference,
Mm.
can't we?
Mm.
It's a beautiful story because it kind of reminds us all when we were on that stage of the journey.
Yes,
When we were playing with the metaphysics and
absolutely it does,
It's like looking into
yes.
your childish past somehow for me.
Yes, it does, and it really does. We relate to it, and we've all got stories about it. There's no question about that. We've all got stories. Yes. Have to get